some
now
important
it
points
has.
about how modern media is impacting power, and that the defining attribute of
I
modern
refreshed like
media,
3 times in
using
the last minute.
Malcolm
Oh, it started in
McLuhan's
a
famous
minute
edict,
ago.
which Nick Fuentes cited, the medium is the message, is that if the medium is the message in the old days meant the medium is print media and TV.
But once again, we have to watch this kind of not totally live. Like, I need to pause it and give my thoughts whenever I have them because, well, to be fair, I don't even think it's live. I mean, this is an airing of it anyway. It's not like they're doing this right this second, I'm pretty sure.
That means it's centralized and it's controlled.
I love that he does start this off with no shirt. That is awesome.
Either state or commercial.
Yeah, then we can skip ad reads. That's true.
And these days we have diffuse, decentralized
So
media.
bright behind me.
Then we're living in a time of pivotal change, and Charlie Kirk's murder is an indicator of those
imagine he's
changing
not wearing
power
pants?
dynamics, ongoing attempts to centralize,
He's sitting
control,
there
and
butt
sanitize
naked.
information, regardless of whether you think what qualities or
No, if we change the category to watch party, we can't make money.
Assign to his murderer.
Watch parties are not monetizable.
The absolute fact, the key fact,
That's
the
the whole
important
point.
fact is that he, Charlie Kirk, among others, is a modern phenomena of new technology, primarily, even though Charlie Kirk's views are sort of very traditional in a bunch of ways. He's a modern phenomena. I think you'll like this conversation. If you're watching us on YouTube, my understanding is that Nick Fuentes' content is heavily censored there. And I must say, I don't think that's right at all. But I would think that whoever I was talking to, unless they were shirtlessly screaming obscenities about one ethnicity or a particular ideology or an individual.
Is he foreshadowing what he's going to do?
I'm learning that there is only one authority.
Hmm.
That authority is not human, nor can it be. Okay, so here's the conversation. If you're watching this anywhere other than Rumble, click over.
Thank you,
and join
Russ,
us on
whoever
Rumble
you
because
are.
it's too hotly contested and controversial to put anywhere else. And if you don't have Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium now, because I financially benefit from that, as well as in a more general sense.
That's a good way to do it.
Consolidates my audience and means that
if he's not going to put it on YouTube,
ongoing
putting a preview and saying like
criminal trials in
you just can't be on
civil
here.
Trials in the United States, spiritual trials every second of my way.
That is like a W way to do that, you know? Because I mean, people don't want to have to get banned just to have him on, especially like major people. But this is like doing it way better than Candace obviously did, because Candace's was like just not on any site at all, just like on hers.
Waking life, but we rejoice when we face trials of any kind. Here's me talking to Nick Fuentes. I'm joined by Nick Fuentes.
Dude, he did the
Hello,
interview
Nick.
shirtless
Hello.
as well.
Thanks for coming on here today.
What does he think? What do you think he's thinking about the shirtless Russell Brand? Hold on, turn this all the way up.
Is our mutual and shared love of our Savior Jesus. If it's okay with you, I want to talk about some people connecting the assassin of Charlie Kirk to your work, but I've only seen that in particular places on the left. Your very, I thought, dignified obituary or acknowledgement, rather, of Charlie Kirk's death. Perhaps we'll I suppose, with whatever level of sensitivity we consider to be appropriate, discuss what Candace Owens has been saying about the potential attempt to intervention into Charlie Kirk's life by, what do we say, powers or connected to Israel. And then I reckon it'll probably naturally lead to us talking about the political and religious entity.
We call those
Israel,
Jews here, Russ,
so that I can sort of better understand it, and we'll just see what comes out of that naturally, shall we? All right, mate. So,
absolutely, yeah, sounds good.
Well, thanks, Nick Fuentes. Well, like, one of the things I know about you is that you're very, very overt and passionate and clear.
That was awkward. That was almost like he thought Nick wouldn't be able to, like,
seems to succeed in the media space that we all operate in now. I've got to say that when
I know why my camera's looking like
Charlie Kirk's assassination, that very day, in fact, I was doing a live stream, and I felt like I can't keep
There we
doing this. I
go.
can't keep having these kind of
I'd smudged my
conversations and endlessly
camera. It was making the
pontificating on
light
cyclical,
diffuse like that.
cyclical news agenda, whether it's Putin meeting Xi. I don't know whether a sort of near-peer alliances across the world, if that is good or bad for people in general when compared to American imperialism. Then like Israel had killed some Hamas leadership in Qatar, I think, and Russia had bombed Poland a little bit, or at least some missiles had gone to Polish territory. And I felt like, look, this is also complicated. I don't know what to say. And then married to that, Nick, I was thinking about like everything that gets thrown into the maelstrom of our culture, whether it's Cracker Barrel changing its logo, or things that are more impactful and significant, is so divisive and utilized.
Destroy,
and I felt a little bit exhausted
destroy.
by it. How do you feel? Like, do you think
I
that
always think
Charlie
he's that
Kirk
guy.
is almost a Princess Diana moment of like a sort of in some places unearned sentimentality, in other places very real grief, in other places exploitation, in other places more division? Does this feel to you as objectively as you can be to be a sort of a significant moment, an epochal moment even? And do you feel emboldened by it, encouraged in some way by the response, or does it make you feel kind of exhausted?
Well, it's always difficult to say so soon after it happens, because in the moment it feels like the biggest thing, and it seems that the world will never be the same. But of course, we've seen a lot of things like that over the years, and we hardly even remember them years later. I think about like the pandemic as an example. Some days I wake up, you forget that even happened, and that was such a, and obviously had ripple effects. But you know, do they have a grip on us sentimentally years later? Not as much, but I do think it is a truly significant moment in politics. I think that for political people, especially for young people, I think it is going to have a chain reaction. And the question is whether that's going to be good or bad. I think this is part of a larger trend of political violence on the left. And usually I'm not that guy. I'm not the right left guy. I try to be a little bit more
I have it at the highest quality
than the partisan kind of thing. But of course, it draws obvious comparisons to the Luigi Mangione shooting, to the Trump shooting last year, and as well
are they
to
using the
school
Rumble
shootings
studio thing
by many similar individuals. You know, whether they're trans or whether they're you know, other kinds of extremists, weird spirituality kind of stuff. So I think what people are saying about this, maybe the big picture on all of it, is what is happening to the young people online and with politics. And this is kind of like it's like a violent assertion of the nihilism that we see on the internet in the real world. This is something that is like unseen. A lot of older people don't understand it, but there's something really wrong here. And so I think this is maybe a visible and profound expression of it where it entered the real world. Maybe that's going to be the legacy here.
I think that's an excellent assessment. Yes, something that we've all become accustomed to online.
Very good.
Vitriol, invective, somehow safely contained within the screen, a kind of like method.
I love, okay, it's like so gay, but at least we know he's probably not gay, because like he's accused of raping a bunch of bitches, you know? And like, he really is, he's just like a straight version of Milo. He's just like a retarded, no offense, but retarded straight version of Milo. And so, you know, him being over the top British and like, you know, using big words, using the word maelstrom casually, you know what I mean? Like fitting that into his vernacular. The maelstrom of the modern day public discourse. I fuck with it heavy, dude.
Own rage that's not going to really hurt anyone except for maybe your feelings if you read too much of it, has now had real life consequences. I would agree. Now, how do you connect it to what seems to be a broader trend that online media pundits, commentators, influencers and activists, a category that would include to varying degrees, certainly Charlie Kirk, yourself, and even me perhaps, and the direct impact of these voices on meaningful political outcomes? Do you feel Nick, that in part the big one of the larger struggles that may be defining our culture is this attempt to manage and continue to centralize information as technology affords a kind of information diaspora.
Dionysus aura, he might be a cultist.
Do you think, in short, aside from your assessment, that it's likely by your analysis, although we've mentioned that other people are saying it's like literally a fan of yours? I mean, I don't know, because I don't trust no one basically, really. So I'm not trying to push that on you, and I don't figure you'd care. You seem like a pretty bold man. Do you feel that Charlie Kirk's murder is, in a way, part of this sort of somewhat nebulous but also general struggle to control information that leads sometimes to outliers, again, that include you, me, and Charlie,
this is complicated,
being smeared, attacked, or shut down? Because whether you agree with you on things, and certainly I'm sure we'll discuss some of the things
I'm
that
on
you disagree on.
I don't even know what he's asking him.
The people that have most, the institutions that have most to lose from this new discourse are old systems of authority that are struggling to cope with a new information landscape.
What?
I absolutely do, and it's interesting that you say
like Alex
that
Jones. You remember when he was on InfoWars like 2 weeks ago, and Alex literally started a question and then monologued at Nick for like 5 minutes, and then like ended it like that was all one question, and then Nick somehow answered it. Like,
who is being blamed for the murder? Let's set aside for a moment who actually did it and people's thoughts on it. What is the perception of the public? People think on the right that it was a radical leftist on Discord, a sexual deviant, transgender, a furry, someone from Antifa, anti-fascist, a communist. What do people on the left believe? It's the Nazis. They think it's people further to the right than Charlie Kirk, who hated him for being too moderate. And if you look at the polling, the young people are very convinced. The right's convinced it's the far left. The left is convinced it's the far right. And I can't help but notice that when people blamed me, it was so effective. It's possible that it was organic, but it seemed to me like it came from the top down. It seemed to me like this was a narrative that was pushed in an organized way, just based on how quickly and how much saturation it achieved in a short time. Although it's possible it's the madness of the crowds in a crisis like this. And you have to wonder, when you look at society, it's not static, it's dynamic.
Right.
People talk about a pendulum swinging back and forth, or a dialectic. There's sort of a thesis and antithesis. What is on the other side of what we're seeing now?
Dialecticism.
Who's being blamed? The far right,
the Communist
far left,
Manifesto.
foreign powers. On the other side of that conversation is a call for something like digital ID, something like censorship, centralized. We can't let radical political thought fester. We can't let foreign intel manipulate us. So what's the answer? There needs to be a regulated media environment. So I do suspect that there is something very dark and sinister happening. And you hit the nail on the head. It actually does have to do with information and who controls the dissemination of information. So that's spot on.
Are you drawing,
and that's like
Jimby?
next level.
A little. I was tracing what I had drawn because it was
we
like
can't make this content without the support of our financial partners. That's simply the nature of the deal that we have with Rumble. I have a minimum guarantee. We sell advertising space on the channel, and that goes towards the money that I get from Rumble. That don't mean, though, that I don't believe in these messages. Indeed, I have commercial relationships with partners whose products I believe and I pray will be of some benefit to you. If they are, buy them. Do me a favor.
Okay.
You're poor, and you've got to do something about it.
Okay, I can skip these ads, but what if they're actually keen
in 2025 is actually simpler than most people think. Is it?
Getting
you
rich
don't need
is
years of
easy.
experience or a fancy degree from Harvard.
Okay, this is insane. Like, what are these ads? These ads are straight up more morally questionable than shilling gambling. Like, can we just be real? Candace Owens ads are like telling old people to refinance their home to pay off credit card debt.
Leaves you in debt. You can actually
like, that's worse than that is. You might as well just be like, hey, Maybe try and negotiate that on the slot machine. Why not?
Start earning in a few weeks, whether it's a high-paying job or you just want to launch something of your own. AI isn't just helpful anymore, it's required. Nearly all jobs today demand AI skills. Yes, they do. As chances of people who are skilled with AI is 130% more than the rest. Worry not, I've got good news for you. This is an AI course to help you get adept at using AI. The robots haven't taken over yet. They're about to. You better learn to be friends with them robots or they are going to unemploy
That's
you.
so true.
Your ass. This weekend, you can join the 2-day AI Mastermind Workshop by Outs.
Okay, this one's not that bad. I mean, this one's what I just said, what I compared it to with Candace, that's way more morally questionable.
By the way, you'll get 10 powerful AI tools, prompt engineering, automating your workflows and building AI products without code. I can't stress enough, this is without code. Thank the Lord for that. Limited seats are available and they're filling fast. Grab yours now via the link in the description. You're quite right to, I hope I'm saying this right, direct us towards the kind of quo bono argument. Who benefits from this? And from that perspective, Nick, left and right become kind of almost sort of tepid adjectives. Left, right, who cares? As long as it's an extreme person, we can legitimize ID, online, control, surveillance, censorship, and that's plainly the agenda. As soon as information became distributable in the manner that it has done, the legitimization of control became very important. And I'm looking at the significant markers that are concomitant with this type of technology. They include, obviously, 9/11, and the Patriot Act, 2008, and the sort of social movements, whether it's like the Tea Party or Occupy, that came out of that, and then COVID, which we touched upon. And you're right that COVID has already been beautifully neglected and sort of consumed by our cultural amnesia. And and I feel because it was such a it was so general and ubiquitous that it somehow actually becomes more forgettable. This is like such a spike that I feel functionally this is going to be a clearer marker, because when I was trying to look for a precedent, Nick, I had to look at the political assassinations, I suppose, of the kind of 60s. And Charlie Kirk in so many ways couldn't be more different from Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the Kennedys, and the people that, or, you know, gosh, even if you think of a pop cultural figure like John Lennon, say, Charlie Kirk is a product of his time, even though he's very traditional and conservative and all of those things that are sort of at the forefront of Charlie Kirk's public identity. As a sort of a phenomenon, he's part of a movement that's primarily, I would say, connected to the Dude,
what is he talking about? No offense.
Potential of these new information resources to
what the fuck
real
is he
life
going
outcomes.
on about?
And the fact that he, as you said, is like a spilling over of online social dynamics into real life through violence. I reckon that might be an indicator of the broader dialectic here. We are experiencing old institutions realizing that they cannot robustly control in the way that they once did information. So whether you're saying, hey, everyone should be trans, or rights for Palestinians, or the kind of content that you're more commonly associated with, or that I'm more commonly associated with, the thing that we all have in common, even where we disagree, is we're sort of arguing for, and this is interesting, I think, Nick,
is he following?
Because I think it's essential.
Is he really actually...
The ultimate argument, would you agree,
what the fuck he's saying?
Centralized power versus decentralized power. Even though a lot of the time it's presented as a tribal argument for who controls the center, perhaps the solution is there is no center now. There isn't a center in the same way. You can't aggregate power in the way that you once did. So I suppose that's in a way just a further exploration of some of the things that we'd already said. If that's true, do you think that we should be exploring ways of seeking truces, alliances, or at least less combative discourse with our opponents?
Absolutely. And it's you know, it's so funny. I feel like we're very aligned on this. Maybe we have a similar reaction to it because, you know, it's not lost on people that there are real cleavages in society. There is real tension between the races, the religions, the genders, the partisan sides. And so the powers that be did not create those tensions, but they do exacerbate them all the time. And they exacerbate those tensions for,
True.
That's where the word conspiracy comes from.
Okay, honestly, I was just thinking like in too magical of thinking for a long time. With that, I was thinking it was just the astrology. But it's never just the astrology. It's like the astrology is just predictive of what people are going to do. Not because anyone's following it, not because anyone's serving it, but it regardless of whether it's making people or it's just happening to predict it, it is just accurate, right? And like the two vicious murders, like back to back that we all saw, like the stabbing and then the shooting, and that being so close together. Like Paul Town's right. That is manipulatable. Without faking anything, you can just put media attention on that other thing too.
For a sort of unseen, concealed agenda, which is convoluted and sophisticated. It's not easily accessible. And I got the sneaking suspicion that is what this provided, which was an opportunity to drive the right against the left, especially when there does seem to be maybe some consensus forming. I know a lot of my clips are becoming popular among liberals and left-wing people because of my criticisms of the Trump administration, of the conduct in Israel. And to the extent that there's a horseshoe, or a far right, far left, maybe realizing they have something in common, this gets in the middle of that process and says, no, we're going to see now a rerun of the right versus the left. And now the right has got to puff up their chest and get angry at the far left. And so on my show on Thursday, I said, we actually need to not take the bait and not lean into our first instinct, which is to get angry at all leftists or all liberals or demonize the other side. And we should really isolate it out and say, obviously, people that want political violence, that's unacceptable. People that encourage or incite terrorism, that can't be allowed in a free society. That's antithetical to a free society. And we should take the opportunity actually to show magnanimity and benevolence to the other side and really kind of stand against any forces that would try to use this to manipulate us, because they really count on people because it is so sensational to get whipped up in the moment and then become irrational. Maybe a week ago, people realized right and left might be an artificial divide that they kind of exacerbate when it's convenient. When you see someone get their neck exploded like that, it suspends reason, people forget, and they just want to see the other side pay. So I do think it's an opportunity to, and although it's difficult for the right, find some consensus, not necessarily with the people that want to shoot us in the head or disrespect a vigil or something like that, but with people that want to see America succeed. And they exist on the left also.
I've been surprised in the last 5 years in particular how ideals that had strong affiliations with one side of that presumed
just making
divide
me sick.
have mobilized and transferred. Like even now, I've seen several very highly regarded people that are on the right who prior to the election of Trump I would have found natural affinity with when it came to the subject of free speech, saying people that have said appalling things about Charlie Kirk posthumously ought be punished in some way. And it's
executed, I say.
For me, as a person, I'm really trying my best and obviously failing to observe principles. And I suppose it's not a principle if it can't withstand the vicissitudes of a culture. That's not a principle then. Now we're dealing with utility. I agree with free speech over here, but not over here. And I was sort of surprised, because I think someone on the left that I watched said, well, when we were saying you oughtn't be able to criticize trans people or whatever, you were saying there's no such thing as hate speech, and now people are saying pretty disgusting stuff about Charlie Kirk, God rest his soul. You're saying that they should be punished. So how do you find do you have challenges in observing principles when you must be aware, as we all are, about what aspect of your
vicissitudes of the maelstrom
content is successful? How do you resist and how are you impacting?
Dude, I don't know why I literally just imagine this guy is the same guy as the Destroy, Build, Destroy Cartoon Network TV show host.
By what you know to be effective about your online content and work.
I think it's because he would always wear white t-shirts and has long hair, and so did the Build, Destroy guy.
Well, I have to say that there's always a temptation because the crowd goes one way and always based on instinct, always based on emotion. And even in my case, it wasn't even so much against the left. With my audience, they wanted to rush and blame Israel. That was the first gut reaction of my audience. And in this case, I said,
dude, and
I'm
me.
certainly not
me
reluctant to blame Israel for one thing or another if there's evidence. I mean, based on who I am, I said, but you know, he was a pro-Israel guy. So, I mean, that would be like saying a Ben Shapiro got taken out, God forbid, and people said Israel did it. That would be pretty far-fetched, you know? But that was kind of the rush to judgment on our side was it's the same suspect. It's always the same culprit. And I guess for me, it always just goes back to
he's scared of
you
Jews.
have to tell the truth. You know, I think that a lot of people, and that seems obvious, but what a lot of people find themselves doing when they talk about these things is they want to satisfy an emotional craving, an emotional state. And
I can't believe Nick is so rattled that he just won't name them now.
you really need to be careful. Am I telling the truth? Am I being objective? Am I looking at the facts? Or am I saying these things to satisfy something that I'm feeling right now? Because I think that's what a lot of people are doing. Another thing that they do is they tend to fall back
emotional.
This kind of heuristic level thinking or like a rule way of thinking where they say something bad happens. Oh, well, Israel is implicated when bad things happen. Or, a right-wing person got shot. It came from the left. We have to get away from that kind of heuristic-based thinking and think more in terms of maybe zoom out and get a broader sense of perspective. And I think in terms of second and third order effects. We have to be a little bit smarter than just kind of like our first gut reaction. It's like we just said a moment ago, you know, yes, everybody's first impulse is people are making us unhappy, punish them. People are saying these things, we got to go after them. We have to think, though, what is the knock-on effect? What's the chain reaction? Okay, we punish these people. What do they do next? What do they do in a year? What do they do in 2 years? What does the government take away from this? What could be justified down the road? We always have to be a little bit smarter than we want to be in a moment like that. But that takes some patience. It takes time to develop that sense.
When I saw Bob Vylan, who's like a British kind of garage or drill hip hop artist, after Charlie Kirk's assassination, like be so sort of delighted in profanity that I feel like I might have like a old lady. I may have gasped. I may have gone, oh! Like, I may have like clutched my pearls, literally. You know, I then sort of tried to think, how can I be? You know, how can I have a reaction that's even interesting or useful? Forget content making. I mean, actually,
made him
the
gasp.
essence of who I am and who I want to be and who I'm trying to be. And I thought, do you know what came to me when I even invited such a perspective? That in 2001, on the 12th of September, I dressed as Osama bin Laden just because I was aware of how much sort of tumult there was in the culture. I wasn't famous yet. I was like hosting on MTV, but it was the same as being on local radio, really. It was no kind of big deal. But I was sort of full of appetite for fame and attention. And when I saw Bob Vylan doing that, I was like, oh, I know that. That's that thing where just because something big is happening, you want to kind of move into it in some way. And either you can move into it with sanctimony, or you can move in it like a vandal, tossing stones at it. Now, I guess what I'm trying to do, like you're saying, is be authentic and truthful and be of some use and some value. And I'll be honest with you, I don't find that easy. And I found it harder still since I got accused and charged, in fact, with rape in my country. And when after that, I'm still dealing with it.
Nick is collabing with a rapist?
In June for it.
What the fuck?
The sort of real life consequences of course, you know, a very sort of promiscuous past and a very selfish and sinful and in many ways exploitative past, I think
powerful truth
alloyed to my current position in online.
He acts like Milo. That's just because they're British. Honestly, This is just like what British millennials, Gen X millennials are like.
Media and the impact of that, particularly probably around COVID and
They're either
subjects
like this
war,
or Sargon.
I don't have a full understanding, although I have a better understanding than I once did of, as you say, how these conspiracies are somewhat diffuse, multivalent, not immediately obvious.
There's two archetypes.
Probably participants that aren't even aware of their own participant. Do you know the reference I always use here, Nick? And I wonder if it's a reference you're familiar with. It's somewhat interesting because it's already sort of like tinged in nostalgia. Probably about 30, maybe 40 years ago, Andrew Marr, a British journalist for the BBC, was interviewing
BBC
Noam Chomsky,
mentioned!
Probably Noam Chomsky at the height of his esteem and excellence. He's probably, thinking about it now, promoting the manufacture of dissent, although that seems like the manufacture of consent, which seems like a ridiculous idea because it's such a sort of an important book. Like,
BBC
to imagine being on a book
mentioned!
tour or whatever. But when he's doing the BBC interview, Andrew Marr, the now yet more esteemed BBC TV journalist, said, in your book Manufacture of Consent, you say that all journalists are told what to say and that we've all been conditioned and we're all participating in manipulating the public. Well, I'm a journalist and I'm not doing that. No one's told me what to say today. I'm saying what I want to say. And Noam Chomsky says, no, you've misunderstood. What I'm saying is if you weren't saying what they wanted you to say, you wouldn't be sitting in that chair. And people don't know the way that institutional media functions and what the complexity of those relationships are, and how the sort of channels of what seems to me now to be a pretty extremist ideology.
You should just become a rapper.
Religion,
This is
even
just
though
a
I
white
do
noise
consider this to be
machine.
spiritual war. In fact, that's one thing that I'm increasingly certain of. The organized power behind these various institutional actions is described in scripture. That's what I believe, and I'd love to know what you think about that. But the way that media, state, global corporations operate together to essentially maintain and increase control is an organized, planned intelligence, and I think you could basically call it the devil or evil or Satan or whatever term seemed most appropriate to you. So I recognize how diffuse and complex it can be. That said, Nick, I'd love your response just to that great barrage of language I hurled your way, and the fact that some of it is like personal,
what the fuck did you just say?
So I'd like to add to that. We'll move in the direction of talking about.
He's adding to the question, dude. What is going on right now?
Personal responsibility and love when commentating on issues that can generate a lot of vitriol. So I guess you'll know where I'm going based on that.
Yeah, you're describing the survivorship bias, which is that everybody that's in media, it's sort of like what you see versus what you don't see. Everybody that's in media has been kept around.
Holy shit.
And that's for a reason. It's because, either they're a conventional thinker or they're not rebellious or they're predictable or something like that. And I think that you're right. People just don't understand the dynamics of how and where the power actually comes from. I don't think they actually, because it is a complex dynamic, the interplay between media, state, military, and something that I've been really in on or really focused on over the past few years is how it seems that everything is downstream from the national security state in particular. A lot of people like to think in terms of everything's about profits, like left-wing types. At one time, they talked a lot more about the CIA and about the Pentagon and the military. Now I feel like all they talk about is the billionaires and the wealthy and the 1%. The more that I look at the media environment and the longer that I've been doing this and analyzing it, the more it seems that everything in the society proceeds from the interests and the needs of the security state. And in particular, its posture towards foreign countries. Its posture towards Russia, its posture, and then necessarily towards its allies, because it needs its allies as a bulwark against its enemies. And then, of course, how that reflects the domestic conversation. So, for example, if there is chaos in America, let's say there's days of lead in America, political violence, chaos.
What?
Who does that benefit? The cui bono. That benefits America's adversaries necessarily. So does it behoove America's adversaries that want to see us fall to
Israeli billionaires
that aren't division? Conversely, it benefits the American security state for there to be stability because there's 350 million people. How many soldiers? 1 million? How many cops? in order to keep everything stable and everything orderly, they need people to actually choose.
Wait, he had all this part on YouTube.
Choose lawfulness, etc. And so there is more that rests on the stability of the society than the force of the state. It's also the belief of the people in the political order. They have to believe it's legitimate. And if they don't, then they don't follow the laws. There's maybe they take some of the government's power from the government. They start to manage their own affairs. Society starts to federalize or confederate. And so you start, once you think like this, you realize things have to be a very specific way. And the media has to condition and enforce that. Education has to condition and enforce that. Entertainment has to condition and enforce that. And that then a lot of how things are starts to make a lot more sense. And in some sense, we have to live with that. I guess that's how it will always be.
Here's a quick break now while we go to one of our partners.
Dude, what do you think they're talking about on the break? What do you think they discuss while on break there? Okay, what are these ads? Holy shit. See, and this is why when I pause and I like give my take, it's good.
Analysis, Nick, consider...
Just
taking two examples.
Now we just skip
radically, as we've touched upon already, technological advancement has altered the world of communications in the way that we have discussed. And some plain examples of its impact beyond just cultural comms, say, might be Napster's impact on the record industry, online media's impact on the outcome of Trump 2016, let alone last time Trump, and Brexit 2015 or whenever that was. Additionally, the emergence of something like Uber and the impact that would make on an industry like minicabs wherever you are in the world, or Airbnb on the way that the hotel and rental, short-term rental industry would operate. That technology has radicalized, revolutionized, I think, every one of those areas that I've listed. And yet there is an attempt to maintain rigidly stasis within the most important systems of power, and I would agree with you that, in a sense, a billionaire is stasis in the maelstrom of the types of permanent powers that you allude to with the, the sort of the three-letter agencies and whatever they're an expression of, whatever they are an expression of. So earlier on, we touched on the need to resist our first reaction, resist the temptation to participate, because even though you said there is a requirement domestically for stability, within that stability, of course, it would be, you want not healthy debate, you want actually vitriolic debate within that window to ensure that the sort of that polarization in itself ensures energized stability. What you don't want is people to say,
shit, he just goes on.
If people are that concerned that Texas is run this way, let people run Texas that way. And in fact, we have such a good example of this outside of your country,
rapist,
my own country,
drug
the UK.
addict.
We
think so?
There's that massive Tommy Robinson march, I'm sure you're aware.
If one says interview naked drug addict breaking, dude, the ACP is going to be reporting this. The ACP is going to have a field day with this. Groypers are going on drug addicts shows, insane schizophrenic drug addicts shows. No, W. Russell Brand, but this is just insane.
And what was fascinating, we had a correspondent, I'm going to call him, even though another way of describing it would be my mate Joe. My mate Joe he was corresponding, we corresponded. He said that when he was talking to the sort of patriotic British folk that were all about, but let's face it, a lot of it was motivated by migration. But I see migration as symptomatic of a deeper problem, as a matter of fact, and focusing on Islam and migration, I think, distracts us from whoever it is that benefits from that kind of hostility towards migrants. Not that I'm saying if people don't want migration, if you live in a democracy, that's the end of that conversation. Let people have a referendum, job done. But he was saying that when he was speaking to the masked,
good. We thought you were woke for a second.
And demonic. That's my
definition. Ass was woke.
They loathed Keir Starmer as well. Now, the thing that's interesting about Keir Starmer, and Lord alone knows it's not easy to find something, the thing that's interesting about Keir Starmer is that he is exactly that type of bureaucratic, managerial, neoliberal, WEF, Davos type politician that has been annihilated through the rise of MAGA populism and Trump in your country. There is no consensus. I don't know how the UK government can survive if the people on the left detest you, if the people on the right, and even the right is now a broader category, even though they try to bolster with further adjectives, far right, hard right, smelly, disgusting right. You know, they try whatever they can, but it just seemed like normal British people at this point. Like, I wonder if what we're being informed by this is that were we able to legitimately deploy the communication technology that has revolutionized the industries that I iterated at the top there, Nick, in a political sphere, power would fundamentally and radically change.
How is this a question?
Might be the type of truces and alliances that we touched on.
How is this a fucking question? Like,
I totally agree. I think that, you know, a lot of people don't realize that the technological revolutions have actually taken place in waves in the past 30 years. And what a lot of people, this is something I've talked about on my show before, you have the internet, you have email, and people think that the internet is synonymous with the later developments like social media or smartphones, but they're not. They're distinct. We've had internet, email, personal computers for a long time. But smartphones and social media, that achieved mass adoption way later than you think. It happened around 2012. And I always think, is it any coincidence that I think the adoption of smartphone and social media hit more than the majority around about 2012 or 2013? Is it a coincidence that it was in the very next election in 2016 that you saw the rise of right-wing populism? Because they are distinct. It's like you got iPhone in 2009, Twitter, YouTube around about the same time.
He just blew his mind.
They reach this adoption about 5 years later. Then you get populism. Then you get Occupy. Very soon after, you get right-wing populism. And what happened right after Trump won? You had the antithesis. You had censorship. You had a government attempt to cool off a very hot technology. And they did it through things like this. It was Christchurch. It was, the various other mass shootings, Dylan Roof, among others. It was not even just the social media. They tried to get the telecom companies involved, the domain registrars. There was like a full-fledged attempt to basically undo the development of this like very hot medium of information. You know, the medium is the message. And what you've seen in reverse.
Bro is exploding over there. Bro's, whoa. Oh, damn. Okay. Ooh.
That's not mine, by the way. That's I'm borrowing
Malcolm McLuhan.
Right,
I know, but I was thinking about it today. Carry on, please. Well,
synchronicity.
Yeah, absolutely. Synchronicities. And what you've seen now in the past 5 years, what's really interesting to me, this is yet, to me, unresolved. Ooh. All of that has now been reversed. Elon acquired Twitter in 2022. TikTok, coming from China, has different regulations than American social media because they don't have the same kind of NGOs and nonprofits advising them about political speech. So between TikTok and Twitter, you now have a liberalized social media. Then you have others like YouTube, Instagram, they're following suit. Why is it that social media is opening up? Could it be that AI models are being trained on social media? Because to get the best LLMs, they need the most data, and the data comes from the posts of as many people as possible. That's one postulate. Maybe it's political, but clearly, the convulsions of the past 10 years, they're taking place on social media, from an open social media to a censored.
Astrologically, again, like I just said, where it's like, it's hard to determine how much the astrology is causing everything and how much it's just actually predictive of how things are going to go and whatever. Hard to say, but that would still work even in that, either way. Like, that still makes sense. So he had Laura Loomer on 6 days ago.
Social media back to an open social media.
The most banned woman in the world.
Political events onto that. The rise of populism, the pandemic and the Ukraine war, the kind of second wave of populism. You could also map onto it the rise of these even next, the 5th generation, which is AI, and all the rest of it that's going to come down the pike later. And so that, to me, that's sort of, we're in a unique cultural moment now in just the past 3 or 4 years that has not been analyzed enough, that we're still trying to figure out, kind of the why and what's happening just right now with what you just said, Keir Starmer and the rest of it.
It amounts to a kind of temporal warping, Nick. How can we even regard temporality as being consistent if you measure, we understand, by the way, pretty imperfectly, how we would measure velocity. If the density of available information is altering inconceivably to almost a point where you it's beyond human conception, then we're not really in the same reality anymore. So the fact that the analytics can't keep up with the progress is not surprising. It's Malcolm McLuhan, isn't it, that said the medium is the message? And I suppose he was making that point in a bunch of ways. But what strikes me about that is the type of media that would have been prevalent then would have been TV and print.
Now, what the
journalism,
fuck is he saying?
And that is centralized and controlled, and therefore it's an indication of the interests and agenda of the people, whether they are commercial partners or sort of old school media barons that own those interests. That would be the message. The media is the message. Now, of course, because of people like you and even me and other people in this space, we're now having to deal with the discordant, sometimes cacophonous, definitely conflict-oriented because of the kind of algorithmic biases that we've touched upon, and they're probably actually are ultimately resourced from a human palate. We respond organically and biologically to highly consequential stimulus, I suppose, might be one way of saying it. But if the medium is the message, meant that once a centralized set of
let me try to pay attention. I was like,
dictate the way the information was conveyed and the type of information that was conveyed. Now we have this giddying diaspora, this sort of blizzard of information, and of course that requires early on an ability to categorize and create hierarchies and even amplify and eliminate different types of information. And the COVID period, that I agree with you, has been too easily discarded, showed us with the brilliant example of Joe Rogan. They were not ready for someone that had that amount of power and reach to not be on board. One of the challenges is with centralized media, and I wonder if these challenges will still exist with these evolving forms, is that people get co-opted. I was a pretty radical little dude when I made it into Hollywood. I'd already been a drug addict and got clean,
I kind of get what he's saying. Okay. It's just that he's like, it's that he doesn't cut the points off and hand the ball back over after he makes a long-winded point. That's why it's so confusing what he's trying to say. Like, that's actually the issue. That wasn't like, that made sense. Basically he was saying that there are controllers, and they, he was referring back to what they were saying earlier, that there are controllers that purposely pushed the COVID information out of our heads or something, and blah, 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 because it was too easily forgotten and whatever. I totally disagree with that. I don't know. The more and more I watch, the less conspiratorial I really get as to like there being big ops. I just think it's like we clearly have a bunch of small factions that exist and are operating in the world that have sizable amounts of power and are conspiring to like undermine each other and like make money over each other, like steal resources from each other and whatever. And like, a lot of these are Jewish, obviously. Like, that's the point. They're not only Jewish, but like a lot of them are Jewish, and they're even fighting each other. And that's why they're not all powerful. Because like, if all this other stuff is true, then how are they not all powerful? Like, how would they be doing any of this stuff if they're not all powerful? And if they're not all powerful, they'd be doing way worse. Or if they are all powerful, they'd be doing way worse things. Like, it would be way more obvious. They wouldn't need to be doing all this other stuff and everything. And I don't know. Like, I just think, people always say, I saw Destiny saying this too. I saw Destiny saying like, well, everyone's just going to forget about Charlie Kirk in like a week. It's not even going to matter. So like, everyone's just going to forget and it's going to be over. And it's like, that is just That's like a little kid's takeaway after death is, wow, everyone's just going to keep moving on because they're still alive. And after a bad thing happens, everyone just keeps moving on, like blah, blah, blah. I think that's just true. Like, because the reason I don't think it requires a conspiracy for everyone to get over the COVID thing is, how long are you supposed to be thinking about that for? Like, how long after it's not relevant anymore and it's not happening anymore are you supposed to be consistently thinking about it? Like, the people who do talk about COVID every single day today are all mentally ill. All of them are insane, you know? Like, it actually requires you to be a obsessive schizophrenic person to continue to be obsessed with it, because like your mind is just built to just move on. Your mind is built to like take in new information. If you were just thinking about COVID-19, how would you even be, what would you even, are you, okay, no, sorry, let me rephrase what I'm trying to say. If you're obsessed with COVID-19 still, are you getting distracted from COVID-19 because you watched Charlie Kirk get killed and now you're talking about that? Like, are you, suddenly I'm forgetting about COVID-19. How quickly I forget about the COVID pandemic. Because like other horrific things or other notable things or interesting things happen. It's like that doesn't require conspiracy. And most of these things don't require serious, like all together majorly controlled conspiracy. It's more like small plots of it, different factions warring against each other, different pieces on the board vying for power, right? That's what I think. But Russell Brand's take is it's interesting because it's going to be like both spiritual and temporal, and it's going to be like whatever he's going to talk about is going to exist outside of space and time and inside of space and time all at once. And he's going to go back and forth between it rapidly at will.
A bunch of acid, been exposed to poverty because of my...
Macron's trans penis made me forget about COVID. So there's something to that. Yeah, it's true. When Palantir and tech giants in general are quickly gaining political power, I think it is very relevant to remember what happened during COVID. Kind of. I agree. Okay, like if Palantir is actually as competent as they pretend and want you to think that they are, then I agree. I just don't think that they are that competent. Like I really do just find myself agreeing with Paul Town. And I remember years ago Paul Town's take just being that basically Palantir is just what you get when you have neurotic Jews who think that everyone hates them, you know, trying to make sure that people aren't like doing another Holocaust. Like you just get them wanting infinite amounts of information and the ability to spy on anyone at any time. And that's really what they want to use it for. It's just like kind of vindictive, like personal, like being able to see that you're not plotting like the Holocaust too, and that it's not coming about, and that everyone doesn't fucking hate them and blah, blah, blah. But it's not necessarily going to allow for like infinite amounts of power because they're just not that competent or that even like directed in that. Like their own neuroticism distracts them so heavily from that it makes it so that they can't like gain infinite power. But yeah, I mean, I think the jury is out on that, obviously, so it is relevant. I'm just saying the way that I perceive it is that Palantir wants to seem very scary. They want to seem all powerful. And I think that's why they're named that. I think that's why all of the companies are designed to seem that way and everything. It's like to win government contracts. It's to scare people, to scare their opponents, to scare everyone around them. But I don't think it's necessarily accurate just because they are portraying themselves that way.
Just sort of environmental and social conditions. Like I was a little bit radical, one might regard, you know, and that is somewhat of a peripheral figure in a bunch of ways. Anyway, once I get into people rewarding me and celebrating me and telling me I'm fantastic and giving me a bunch of money and having access to sort of lots of sex and stuff, it's difficult. You're not going to, it's going to take a lot of fortitude. And I would argue simply a connection to God, actually. If you're not connected to God, if the culture is your God, then the God is feeding you. The God is feeding you. You're cool. The false idol is proving to be, somewhat truthful in that moment. At least it's fulfilling your pagan needs. Now, I wonder if, in this instance, how easily co-opted and biased and controlled we will be, because if the medium is, as you say, as he, as citing Malcolm McLuhan, is that right? You'll tell me in your answer, I hope. Then if the medium is the message, then the message is you can't centralize power in the same way anymore. You're going to have to yield power. You're going to have to find ways of devolving power. And probably the country that's most likely to be able to accommodate that, due to its sort of relatively recent origins and perhaps the robustness, but hopefully the degree of flexibility in your constitution, might be your country. I can't see it happening in China, Russia, and the Britain's resisting it pretty heavily. And yet that does seem to be the central dynamic. So I wonder, obviously the people that least want that message to be received are those with most to lose, and that is centralized media, the government, the sets of corporate and commercial interests, and if there is some sort of dark occultist power behind that, presumably that too doesn't want it. So how then do you think we promote those ideals, if you agree that they are ideals worth promoting?
Well, it's difficult to say, because that is obviously one perspective on it, and that could be the idealistic, the aspirational idea, which is, and certainly that's what I thought for most of my life, for most of my adult life, is that Trump is on Twitter, and that means he can talk to us directly. So there's no gatekeepers, no mods, no censorship. Like, he's connected to us. There's no kind of gatekeeping institution that stands in between and mediates between elected officials and people. But then you think about things like what they said after he won. They said, well, you may think that was the case, but really the Russians were involved. That was the answer from the government, is the Russians manipulated the conversation. And, for the longest time, I said, that's ridiculous. We love Trump because of what he was. And that was true for myself. But you also think about things like the Arab Spring. You also think about the first time that social media was deployed in a political context was by Western NGOs, was by the American empire against these Muslim countries. And it was aspirational. The younger generation demanding change, democracy. But what did it turn into? It turned into Islamism. Hosni Mubarak was replaced by the Muslim Brotherhood. It led to the rise of ISIS in some cases. It certainly benefited Israel in many ways, benefited the American state. And so, even especially over the past 5 years, you have to wonder, the things that you see on Twitter, is it even real? And before we even figured out what was even, you could say, authentic or legitimate on social media, we didn't even have time to figure out that conversation. Now you have AI. Now you have AI, which is deploying their own agents on social media in an automated way, creating images, deep fakes, manipulated images, like with this assassin. One of the things that people say is a discrepancy about the person that's in custody is that he does not resemble the photo that the FBI gave. And the FBI said, well, that's because we AI enhanced and upscaled the resolution of the photo. So it's like, I think that
it's like
there was maybe this early
shit.
aspiration that, yes, it would lead to freedom and decentralization. At the same time, though, I think it's even maybe bigger than control and freedom. It's order and chaos. And I think that truly we're getting chaos. Truly we're getting, and everything that comes with it. Deception, a lack of accountability, people pretending to be someone other than they are, sinister forces manipulating people, preying on the vulnerable, the dumb. And so, and by dumb, I mean the deaf and blind. I mean, people that are, in a deeper sense, they're not able to critically think. I think about
Yo, Russell Brand confirmed wearing pants. So you see his knee?
Like my parents, my mom texts me
You're
all the
sitting
time.
like how I
Nicholas, is this real? I saw this on Twitter. They're not ready for this. They're just not ready for that kind of stuff. And so I think what we're seeing is a destabilization, and to call it freedom is a way to interpret it. But I think in terms of the physical, I like that you said velocity and density, because you can use the physical language to describe these things. It's a destabilization. It's a disintegration. It's an atomization. It's things coming up.
What? The
Universe?
fuck?
I never.
Did he just host a quartering?
Death cult, and that they worship death and violence and such.
Don't host
Christians
the fucking quartering.
I'm thinking like that. I'm thinking that that if we find Christ,
did we hear this part yet?
Must find Christ.
Do I have to find where we were?
We must live allow Him to live through us, and that's a kind of annihilation of the self, isn't it?
Wait, Melanie was on there. Oh my gosh!
I felt like my body was being put in shock. Like I was like.
Wait, so that's Hannah Claire Brimelow? Is that actually who that is? Is that what's going on here? That's Peter Brimelow's daughter?
If this goes on for...
Subscribe! Hey! I was watching that! Oh, you fucking asshole! All right. How do I subscribe? $9.99 a month? Manage subscriptions. Cancel. All right. Okay, all right. I subscribed and canceled it. We're good.
The transcendence, the victory over death on the cross, but love. That's the thing I wanted to.
Where were we?
In a deeper sense, they're not able to.
What was the last thing he was saying? I got up because I had to turn the air on. Now I forgot. What was the last thing that they were saying?
Critically think. I think about like my parents. My mom texts me all the time. Nicholas, is this real? I saw this on Twitter. They're not ready for this. They're just not ready for that kind of stuff. And so I think what we're seeing is a destabilization, and to call it freedom is a way to interpret it. But I think in terms of the physical, I like that you said velocity and density, because you can use the physical language to describe these things. It's a destabilization. It's a disintegration. It's an atomization. It's things coming apart. And whenever things come apart in the atomic age, nuclear explosions occur. Energy is unleashed. And on the other side of it is destruction,
But in the quantum age, which is the age we're in, a deeper unity is discovered. Now, the idea that there is that much energy entailed and compounded atomically is the miracle that defines the.
He should not have said atomically around age. But he should not have used the word in atomic while talking to Russell Brand. That was a mistake.
The quantum age is that beneath apparent separateness, there is a unity.
What about the age of Aquarius?
Outskirts of our Lord are felt there.
If you ever hear anyone say, by the way, here's a little tip. If you ever hear anyone speaking about astrology refer to anything as the age of Aquarius, that's fake. That's like the age of Aquarius should be like 500 years ago or something. Okay, that's just like not real at all. He didn't say that. I'm just saying.
To your point about the
just reminded me.
Islamic Brotherhood that benefited from the Arab Spring revolutions, one of my friends, I hope he's still my friend, some people don't survive all of this stuff, Adam Curtis, the filmmaker, said that, they were ready to go with an idea. While there's all this sort of chaos of how should we run it? Who's going to be in charge? Should we have a new assembly? We'll vote for this. In come the Muslim Brotherhood with, we got an idea, let's go! And I wonder if there is... I'm a Christian, so that means at the forefront, when C.S. Lewis says, do you think, when C.S. Lewis says, you know, we oughtn't be trying to create some kind of theocracy. What we should be doing is you have a Christian accountant. As I'm listing this, I'm bearing in mind I'm talking to Nick Fuentes, so see if you get this joke as it's coming down the line. You have a Christian accountant, a Christian lawyer, a Christian movie mogul, so I wonder, like saying like a Christian banker and goldsmith. I'm thinking that you know that if we find Christ, we must find Christ, and we must live allow him to live through us, and that's a kind of annihilation of the self, isn't it? So what are they gonna be like? Because I am I hope you don't think I'm naive, because I've been through a lot of burning, but I feel that of course the people that are in positions, the institutions of centralized power are going to be, generally speaking, more adept in chaos because their systems are more diverse, are more malleable, but their disadvantages is that they are systemically entrenched, whilst in a general way, chaos in the last sort of 20, 30 years in particular, we've touched upon it.
He needs a fucking whiteboard. Like, literally, this guy needs a whiteboard so he can, like, write out and draw what he's, like, saying. You know what I mean? I feel like that would benefit everyone involved. It would slow him down a little bit. And then it would just, like, I don't know, like, allow him to, like, visualize it.
You know, the Patriot Act after 9/11, whatever laws have left over.
I'm not texting,
COVID.
I'm writing.
They create.
Fucking
seems like,
nerds.
inverted commas, they either generate chaos or they permit chaos, and in the ensuing unstable environment, they're able to legitimately instantiate further systems that allow the furtherance of their agenda and goals. But our rebel advantage is that we're mobile and guerrilla and amidst it and molecular, but our disadvantage is, you know, if we're the subject of, like, once October 7 happened, I was in some ways, forgive this because of terrible, terrible tragedies around that event. October 7 in my country, I was all over the headlines. For 2 weeks, every newspaper and all the TV, it was just incessantly, Russell Brand is definitely a rapist. And all those years when he was telling you that he was sleeping with loads of women, that was a trick to cover up that he was, you know, I was like sort of watching it. There was like newspapers saying to, like, your wife should leave you. In fact, it was addressed to her. You should leave him. It was a headline. British newspapers, man. Anyway, so when that happened, I thought...
That is true. They are insane.
Wow.
They don't have editors either.
I watched it and what it did in the somewhat unified spaces of what is still sort of thought of as the right. But I know you have a much more sophisticated understanding of these things than I do, because I know that you're a native of those worlds that I don't understand, the various sub-chats and stuff. But it seemed that kind of... it created, like,
we're in so many sub-chats, dude, you don't even know.
Destroyed something that was interesting and powerful and meant that something came to the forefront that wasn't really being addressed. And of course, that's Israel and Palestine and the sets of arguments that have long surrounded Israel and continue to now. Now, I suppose from your perspective, is it so let's go into that a little bit. What do you think about that how October the 7th revitalized an ancient debate, and how is that most ancient of debates gonna evolve in this new terrible and metastasizing environment that we populate, and many people would frankly blame both you and I for in different ways in different places. So what happens when the irresistible force meets
Russell
the immovable
Brand's
object,
fault,
which is perhaps what we could call Israel and online content?
Well, it's what's really interesting about what you said earlier, even when you said what happened in the Arab Spring is the Muslim Brotherhood was ready to go. There's a lesson in this. There's a principle in this, which is that society is coming apart, has been coming apart. We're in the age of complexity, and we have been for a long time, whether you call it modernism, postmodernism, the quantum age. People have realized that things are starting to fall apart. And what's interesting about the Israelis is they were writing about this in the 1980s. There's a doctrine by one of their planners named Oded Yanon. He wrote it for a future prime minister of Israel in the 80s. And in that plan, they talk about their strategy for the Middle East, and in there is talking about Gaza and the West Bank and Syria and Iraq and Iran, their adversaries. But what a lot of people miss, a lot of people don't even know about this document. Some know about the military doctrine. But what is also in there is they say that our big enemy is not the Arabs. It's not even the Soviets that give them weapons. They said the big enemy is this modernism, this coming apart. And they said the reason that we are going to survive is because we're going to be strong. Although we're small and few in number, although we don't have a big country or a lot of territory, we're solid. We're together. We have a sense of who we are. We're concrete, defined. Whereas the rest of the world is going to be ripping each other apart over ideology, over ethnicity, all these different cleavages. We're going to be strong. And so you look at even like our country right now, and it's like the whole world has turned against Israel. China, Russia, the whole Muslim and Arab world held a conference yesterday. The Organization of the Islamic Committee and the Arab League, they held this joint meeting. Literally every Muslim and Arab country was there. They put out this statement.
Dude, the Arab League makes it sound so cool. Like calling yourself the Arab League or like the Muslim Brotherhood, you know? They just have the coolest fucking names. I mean, listen, and they're probably all terrorist organizations or whatever. And for that reason, I disavow violence, obviously, okay? But I'm just saying, like, legit, that's the coolest shit ever.
Western Europe is kicking them out of Eurovision and boycotting in their own way. In America, they're unpopular, and yet they're able to keep doing what they do. And the reason why is because they are more organized. They are more solid than any other group. Even in America, where there's division between right and left, like you said, there's even division within the right. And it's so funny because it's so true. The hard right, the far right, you know, the hard far right, whatever. It's like, but they are absolutely solid. And there's a lesson to be learned from them, which is that is going to be the superpower in the
Study
century,
the Jews.
is organization. Who can actually direct and focus the energy of a large group of people effectively.
Actually true.
You can't take it for granted.
True.
In these big, diverse countries, in this complex, globalized world with ideology, few, even a great and large and mighty country like America, can effectively do that anymore. And if America comes apart, who will be the strong horse that takes over in America? If chaos prevails over order, if these forces that they use grow outside of their control, who is going to win the revolution? It's going to be the strongest horse. And I said, many years ago, I have confidence in our cause, and my cause is I'm a Christian. I want Christian government in America.
Don't worry, we won't have that issue.
Also, I said all we have to worry about is being that strongest horse. Wanting it more than they do. And Christians uniquely are a death cult. There's sort of a weird mirror. The nihilists are a death cult and that they worship death and violence and such. Christians are a death cult in that we reject the world. We're willing to die. We're willing to accept death as it comes. Not all, but that's what we're called to do. And so it's like, it's sort of a scary time, but in many ways, when all is said and done, those are the forces that exist. It's the satanic nihilists in the country that are sponsoring all these mass shootings that do worship chaos in itself. And then it's the Christians that are going to be willing to die for what they believe, that are going to be willing to take a bullet in some cases, or will be expected to. All these conservatives, left-wingers that are cargo culting, movements from the 30s or from the 60s, that's a LARP. They're role-playing. Everybody's role-playing. Everybody's trying on these different identities. At the bottom of it, you're going to find the most primordial forces. And I think we're all going to learn about ourselves in the coming anarchy. That's kind of my big picture, even when it comes to Israel, that it has something to do with that there too.
That's fascinating. When you say primordial, the sort of the unformed, the water upon which the Holy Spirit moves. I mean, what do you? I like we say.
Let me do this real quick.
The nihilists is the sort of the atheistic, materialistic, individualistic, and somewhat rational, like pure rationalism without the supernatural. embrace of death. Christianity is, of course, defined by the transcendence, the victory over death on the cross.
The color?
But love. That's the thing I wanted to add to that, Nick Fuentes, is that I was thinking that as you were saying that, like the sort of nihilistic death cult and like we Christians are a death cult because we reject the world. We do not conform to the pattern of the world. We accept from him. And like, isn't that challenging? I'm challenged by that. I'm challenged by that with my vanity. I'm challenged by that in the moments I think, oh, like don't think that I'm a person that doesn't wear a shirt and then it doesn't cross my mind. Oh, you've not got a shirt on, Russell. You know what I mean? I live in that weird liminal space where I don't wear a shirt and then feel like I'm a bit embarrassed that I didn't wear a shirt. So with accepting and embracing Christ.
Okay, that is really funny. I'm not gonna lie.
Like he's very clear. Love one another as I have loved you, which many people conclude means up unto the point of death, but because of love. I want to add that. So you began that excellent, as always, and interesting answer that led to you saying that amidst the primordial, the supreme forces will ultimately dominate. They will magnetize. The form will be sucked towards the most powerful and potent ideas. Sometimes I think there is the bridge and there is the cross. I'm talking geometrically. I'm talking like Jung's Red Book now, Nick, as best I can. That the cross has to personify. We have to accept him, the man God, as well as the ineffable, unknowable God that we can't even name. The bridge.
I'm speaking of the Red Book now. I gotta just start saying that, like, because honestly, you could just take anything from the Red Book and just complicate it and say it like it's fact, and no one could ever fact check you ever. You know what I mean?
Everything be outside of Christ's covenant. That's somehow creating sort of molecular dynamic relationships in the primordial that could be demonic.
Derry King says, 5 things I can say that JimboZoomer cannot say. Number 1, Mormons practice blood atonement, a.k.a. blood libel, sexured rituals on white Christian children. 2, my friend was never arrested for showing up to Columbine dressed as the shooter. 3, I never went on a date with weed-smoking, brown-eyed honeypot. 4, I've never been in a tranny group chat. 5, I'm 100% white.
That could be all sorts of things. I say this from experience. I say this because I've lived in that world, taking drugs, hedonism, all that stuff, and felt the shamanic, felt like I've got this sort of power. But that's the power of,
it's over.
Like when you, as it says in maybe Jeremiah, like keeping cisterns, like it's my power, or Lucifer himself when I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. That's like I want my own circuit. I am Russell with my power, rather than the living flow, the living water. Do what you will with me. I'm already dead. So there is love in the death cult of Christ. I mean, perhaps abidingly love.
True.
Love, I wonder. It's a question, not a statement. And then why did you talk about Israel and that idea? Because I'm aware that I'm talking to you, and I've watched your stuff and everything. I'm familiar with you. I know who you are. But I'm like, when I'm talking to you now, I think I can't imagine this person saying something about Israel or Jews that I'm going to go, no, that's not nice. I can't imagine it. There's our directors are like a Jewish guy and super in his faith, and obviously, what I want is that
It's like I would never say anything that would make you uncomfortable. Having a Jewish producer.
Us to all, can't we all just get along, Nick? Can't we all just get along? Like, I want to, when I'm talking to, I've got loads of mates that are Jews. I've got loads of mates that are like, well, how can you, like Palestine, Gaza, and I'm like, well, look, unless there's some way, like, it can't be that you're going around everywhere like Mrs. Doubtfire. 1 minute you're like, oh, shalom, mazel tov. Another minute, oh, no, I can't see another dead Gaza baby, and I can't take it. So what is it that you believe that's getting you deplatformed and so hard for everyone?
Well, as far as I think that it has a lot to do with power, of course. I mean, the reason that I'm deplatformed is because I started saying a lot of these things let's also just recognize that we're in a completely different climate now. I started my career the week after Trump got elected, when the censorship started, like when it basically began. It was the wrong time. Because if I got in 2015, it would have been right before. You grow a little bit, you achieve some escape velocity. But I jumped in really at the worst time, when everything was politically incorrect. Everything was cancelable. And
where's that watch Nick was wearing? Yeah, did you hear how uncomfortable he got when someone asked him that in the super chats? That was crazy. They were like, "Yo, what's that watch that you're wearing?" And some of your, I sometimes see you wearing a watch. He goes, "The fuck do you care, huh? Why are you asking?" It's like, yo, what? Whoa. Oh,
bannable. But the reason that I'm more blacklisted than
it was like someone was asking in person. It's like someone in person, like eyeing the watch. It's like, hey, what is that? Hey, what you got there, huh?
Anybody, I think there's two reasons. One is, unlike most American conservatives, I do criticize Israel heavily and immensely and strongly. And that is the one thing you cannot do. And the reason why is because, well, Israel has a lot of clout and power in the Republican Party, and actually all the right-wing movements in Germany and France and the UK and Italy. They have this network that sort of runs the opposition in many of these countries.
Kabbalah
and then
bracelet,
the other thing is, it's not just that, but it's also that I've also always been with a mind towards an actual goal. I feel like there are a lot of people that are on a show or on a live stream and they're just complaining. They want to shake their fist and we need to say this. This isn't right. But as a young man, as a younger guy, I was always motivating and inspiring other younger guys.
He's talking about politically provoked.
In college and
politically provoked, always just hating. You ever notice that? Can't build, critique. That's what they say.
People don't even think. They're afraid of college kids, and they're afraid of college kids because college kids work in important jobs that have some power. And if you're in a selective college, you're groomed into the most powerful jobs. So they're worried about anybody that can mobilize very bright, very entrepreneurial young men. And to the extent that you have somebody like me, they're not worried about skinheads. They're not worried about old, crusty, Gen Xers and boomers left over from the Civil War. They don't know it's over. They don't know segregation's over yet. They're not worried about that because those people are not attracting the young. And they're not attracting a certain socioeconomic strata. That's another reason they really don't want me involved, because they know if I go into, the CPAC or the Turning Point Conference, I'm going to be a magnet for bright young men that will become followers or that will maybe be inspired by the ideas, and they're going to break.
$5. What did you just put in your pocket?
Thank you, not. Yeah, this is how Nick was acting. When someone asked about his watch, I swear.
What was it that was in your pocket, though?
What was that?
Because it seemed interesting.
What do you have?
Really interesting. What
were you wearing on your wrist there?
No, you can tell me. Just tell me what's in your pocket.
What watch is that?
Turn your pockets out really quick. Turn them out. Just turn them out. What is in your pocket? You got nothing to worry about.
Thank you.
With the conventional.
True.
And that's
Literally
not what
true.
they want. And what they want at a lot of these different campus groups is they want to indoctrinate the young people into the conservative program, and they want to groom them. And I'm sure some of how this works. It's not much different than Hollywood, I imagine, is they get the young people while they're young. They get them as part of this quid pro quo thing. Oh, you hang with me, I'll give you access. I'll introduce you to the people I know. And they get them on the train, and this is how they pump out one generation after the next, like you talked about before, of people that are manufacturing the consent, people that are part of this control mechanism. And I think that, maybe even more than the idea, which is particular, I'm criticizing Israel, I'm telling it to young people, I'm disobeying and rebelling.
Except for now, when he's Jay-sucking.
Against the regime. Because I think I'm a reasonable guy.
Short for
I don't think I come across as hateful or maniacal or sinister. And people say that I wear a different face when I'm with different people. I don't think I do that. But maybe more than anything, they hate that I'm
You're welcome.
ridiculing and questioning the dogma of the GOP, and that's why the GOP was so complicit. The organized right wing was complicit in my being unpersoned and blacklisted. So I think that's the big why.
Yeah, you notice that too? Nick didn't even mention the Hullabalunga, the hollow hoax, the Hullabunganung, the
Yeah, that's good. I didn't. That's the first time anyone was explaining that to me. Thank you. It's helpful. You know that film Gangs of New York, the Scorsese movie. It's really
hollow
cool.
schmunga?
You know how it sort of shows how those protean groups
pocus.
ultimately become institutionalized over time, and you're invited through
Jew
insignia, livery, uniform, etc., to forget that really it's sort of tribal and pretty brutal. And it's pretty clear that that's a sort of a good illustration by an excellent filmmaker of the way that various agencies, institutions and affiliations might have looked in a less managed format. This seems like it's sort of a terribly hacky device here, but it came to me real naturally when I was listening to you. So it's organic in spite of its hackiness. Because when I listened to you right at the beginning, I know that recently you had a conversation with Candace Owens, and then I sort of saw that somehow it didn't go well or whatever, and I feel like, how can you not be getting on with Candace Owens when CandaceOwens is sort of right-wing, outspoken, confident, Christian, how can that be happening? And then I was sort of thinking, I feel like maybe you said something about Tucker Carlson, and I don't know if it's I don't know if this is because I'm weak and want people to like me, because I know I do want people to like me. I can tell you that for a start. But
this is aware.
Know Tucker, and I really love him, and I know Candace, and I love her, and I've just met you. And I think this man is brilliant and should be. You give any sort of political conversation that doesn't want to include this person, it's because they've got something to hide or whatever. Although plainly there'll be stuff
they're just
about Israel. I'm sure you've said things when you've gotten on a roll. They're a bit more whoa or whatever.
Or they're just an ignorant.
So let me can I just run through some names, even though this is not the sort of thing I would normally do, and I almost hate myself for doing it. And just getting sort of what you think. All right, so Candace Owens, where do you align? Where do you not align?
Well, we're both Catholic, so I respect her faith immensely, and she has been very outspoken and brave criticizing Israel. And so on a good portion of that, I agree. The difference, do you want lightning round, or do you want me to talk a little
more
slightly?
lightning? See,
okay,
you can talk quick.
lightning.
You talking thick quick, but do hit hard. And if you say, by some miracle you said something that you regretted, I would not stream it. If by some miracle you did that.
Yeah. Well, you know me. I have to guard my reputation very, very,
I don't see Coca-Cola advertising with you after this, let me tell you. I think you're going to lose a lot of those Disney streaming contracts.
True.
Oh, yeah. Cut that out. No. So, Candace, I disagree with her on race. And on some of her more esoteric stuff, the Macron thing, the Frankist stuff, I disagree on that totally.
The esotericism.
What about Andrew Tate?
It's too.
Well, he's Muslim,
too
believes
deep
in
for
polygamy.
Me.
I'm Catholic. I don't believe in polygamy. Everything else, I agree 100%.
Okay. The Tommy Robinson.
Well, he is right about the Muslim immigration in the United Kingdom, and he's a Zionist, very pro-Israel, and even pro-Indian immigration. So also disagree with him on race and nationalism.
Tucker Carlson.
I agree with him on so much, but I would say that he doesn't think it has to do with Judaism, just neocons. I think it has everything to do with Judaism. Our kind of neocon issue is deeply entrenched in that.
Crowder.
I don't really watch Steven Crowder. He just seems like a basic conservative, doesn't talk about Israel or Jewish power at all.
Alex Jones.
Wow, he didn't even take a shot at him. He didn't even drop a drive-by shot at him.
We are coming more into agreement. I guess he's more pro-Trump than me.
Jimbo, why have I been banned from the kick chat? Ask NGGR lover. It might be because of your name. Maybe change your name.
Why have I been banned from Kit Chat 3?
Maybe change your name a little bit.
But I agree with him about Israel a lot. He's maybe less critical of them than I am. He's also a lot less racial. But we've been kind of converging in many ways, so I think that's changed a lot.
David Icke.
I don't think it's lizards, but he's been on the money for years. But I don't think they're actually reptilians.
So, like, just even like your responses there, it seems like then that you, in particular, think there's something about Judaism, the faith of Judaism, not just the political entity of modern Israel, which might be regarded as a country that's, like any, I'm assuming, not homogenized when it comes to political power. And I heard something pretty recently.
He says he loves them, though.
I'm sure you'll be aware of, because I've heard you talk about this stuff, and I can see that you are, whatever you your detractors may say, I can, from listening to you prior to this conversation, tell that you're not ill-informed or misinformed. I heard that, like, at the point that Netanyahu got into power most recently, that there was a lot of unrest politically in Israel, and he maybe would not have, he was like on the edge of maybe not getting into power, and he doubled down on a bunch of stuff. So you, with your positions on Israel, you think it's particular in Judaism and the Judaic faith rather than political entity Israel and geopolitics and territorial
management.
Now
it's getting interesting.
And can you explain to me a bit? Because I don't understand. Can you explain?
I think it does. Yeah.
They have a delay.
I think a lot of the issues with Israel do spring from religious Judaism because, you know, when you look at like mystical Judaism, for example, like the Kabbalah, they do say things like that. They don't believe Gentiles have equality with Jews. They, unlike Christians, where, you know, we say there's neither Jew nor Gentile, these categories don't exist. They still do believe in those categories, and they believe that those are defining categories. So it goes above and beyond, like, you know, they like Israel a little bit more than we do. In some cases, they don't believe that we are ensouled. They don't believe that we have the whole of the law. We don't have culpability because we don't have agency. And so, then you look at, for example, some of the Zionist rabbis like Meir Kahane. He said that all Gentiles should be enslaved or killed. And look at the Netanyahu government. There's members.
Okay, but look around. He's right. How can we even disagree with that? But where can we even? Come on, look around you. Tell me that's not true. A few days ago, my father passed away. It's difficult for me to even find the words for the emptiness it leaves me with. He was my last family member in the state, and I was there with him until the end. I will endure, but I don't think I'll ever be the same. Poor Asmom. That is sad. Damn.
Now, Netanyahu is, I don't consider, he's at least not publicly a religious extremist, but he's got members of his cabinet that are. And they say things like spitting on Christians is an ancient Jewish tradition. They do believe in this kind of thing. And I think it's hard to argue that this isn't an attitude, at least that's prevalent, if it's not a religious conviction of most of the society, when they hold the Gazans collectively responsible for the actions of Hamas. And they say things like, you know, well, 1,200 Israelis died. Now we're going to kill 100,000 of you. Or this was 15 9/11s. There's like this, it shows up over and over where they think their lives matter more. And I would say that maybe that's the chief difference between Christians and Jews from a religious point of view, is it seems that Christians really do love their persecutors and their enemies. Jews, as evidenced by the Old Testament, want to destroy their enemies, want to literally salt the earth, kill the women and children, as said in the Old Testament in Kings. They want to destroy their enemies. They want to destroy Amalek. And certainly not every Jewish identifying person, ethnically or religiously, would say that outright, but and it's, you can also kind of even see maybe where that comes from, their history of persecution, their history of, you know, people being prejudiced
really cooking
against
now.
them.
What will Russell Brand think of this?
Posture.
Now it's the controversial part.
Like America, that kind of insular, tribalistic, arguably supremacist or chauvinistic mentality, they're acting as this organized force in our country, and that has given them this immense power and privilege over people that want the best for America or for all Americans. And I think that like that ideology, it just doesn't work with the kind of open society that we have.
I know you were like, because you're aware of the medium and stuff, trying to give us a somewhat simple answer where you collated together a variety of nodes of information to help me understand something that's somewhat new to me. But a few things, as you acknowledged yourself in your answer, Nick, there are obviously groups within Islam that have a comparable mentality of annihilation, genocide, and execution, even if right now there are no Muslim groups practicing anything that could be compared to that. I don't know, maybe people say stuff about Syria or whatever, I don't know. Then though,
what?
That's sort of as soon as we go into the sort of esoteric subsets within any of the faiths and parts of doctrine that are particular, I think by definition that means that it is it's peripheral, or it's certainly not ubiquitous. And so, because I would say that what I was genuinely thinking when you were quoting Kings there is I was thinking about the bit where it says, like, I think maybe it's Revelation, which I bet you know more than I do. Like, the branch, we got to graft that branch back on. At some point, that branch has got to, like, so I was wondering, I was thinking, like, as a Catholic, you must surely believe that part of the rapture and the return of our Lord is going to be the conversion and the embrace of Christ precisely by the Jews and by all members of the Jewish faith. And that's a pretty, even though it's in there and it's in the, it's a pretty,
that's not what it says.
I don't suppose of.
He does not say by all members of the Jewish faith. That's definitely not what the scripture says.
The whole body of the church, and that in particular I think is going to happen, and I'm down with that. That's probably a marginal view, and whilst it's a sort of a loving and Christian embrace of our Lord and Savior, it still amounts to
there will be some
ending of Judaism, like from an ideological perspective, i.e., Paul wins Peter, like that's it now, no circumcision. So there's that. And then sort of when you cross-reference that, sort of, I bet you're right, there will be, like, within, the esoteric sects within Judaism, people that believe in supremacy. And if there are people within Islam who think that, and maybe even people within Christianity, I'm thinking maybe Westboro Baptist Church or Clan or whatever, like, not that these are particularly big, but they're sort of vivid examples of Christianity gone awry.
Protestants,
and maybe you could argue even
not,
the kind of secularized Christianity that's deployed in the United States when we're sort of conquering Middle Eastern territories.
That's not only Protestant
in the name of whatever interests ultimately control the United States. When you talked about, like,
they overdo it,
the challenge of Judaism within the United States of America, and how the kind of interrelationships and between various Jews and presumed Jews, like, has led to an imbalance of representation, one could say, in movie industry or banking or finance or whatever, like that. Are you saying there's a connection between that and the esoteric aspect of Judaism that you cited? Because that I could really see as just being cultural, social. Why wouldn't you? And then I want to add to it as well, that as a Catholic, don't you sort of necessarily believe that Catholicism is a superior branch of Christianity to Eastern Orthodoxy or whatever this is that I am? I'm the one where Bear Grylls baptizes you. It's a small sect. So it's just me, actually, I think. But we're going to make a difference. Anyway, but so I wanted to ask you that. Like, they seem atomized notions, the esoteric aspect of Judaism that's got sort of like intense views about supremacy and the cultural power. Are you saying that there's a combination between those two?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex Jones level yapping. That might okay. They might be doing it this way because there's such a delay that he has to, like, ask the question and then let Nick talk and not interrupt him because there's, like, such a delay where it's, like, going to be awkward and they're not going to be able to realize when they're talking over each other.
Because, you have to recognize that up until 100 or 200 years ago, the Jewish people existed in these religious communities. They were all religious. And so and it wasn't even just esoteric, it was the legalists, the Talmudists, but also the mystics,
yapping,
the
but that is like a
They
part.
both believe that the Jews are unique, chosen. They should not intermarry with Christians. They should not praise Christians. They should spit when they pass a Christian cemetery. Because according to the Jewish view, they believe that Christians are idolaters. It's actually interesting. They use the same language as Muslims because Muslims and Jews are true radical monotheists. And both the Muslims believe the Trinity is idolatry, and as do the Jews. And so they view the worship of Jesus as idolatry, and therefore Christians as idolaters. They cannot be praised, respected, etc. And I think that their culture is filled and has been filled with these kinds of attitudes, even to the extent that you have many Jews that have become very secular and very a-religious or non-religious. They still carry with them the story. They still identify as the Jews that were enslaved in Israel, that were in exile, that were pushed out, that were in the Inquisition. It's such a powerful narrative, and I think that's why we all know they tend to group up together. They look out for one another. You can call it nepotism. You can call it whatever you want. That's where you get these very tribal attitudes where they'll put themselves over outsiders. They kind of get together and say, oh, it's... And certainly there's an inherent tribalism, I think, of any people for that matter. I think that's just a biological fact. But I think theirs is so empowered by their heritage, culture, religion. And with Jews, all these things are together because their religion and their ethnicity and their culture are all one. You know, their religion is matrilineal.
This only has like
by the mother. So the ethnicity and religion are one.
Left.
And
okay.
the culture
okay.
proceeds from these things too. So as far as America is concerned or the rest of it,
it's kind of not as fun as like most of the other ones because there's not really back and forth. Like it really is just listening to people like write essays at each other almost.
Of course, I am Catholic. I think that we have to look at the world.
Don't ever talk about the kick-ass like that again.
There was a time liberalism prevailed in Europe and America when we're all Christians. But now we're living in a country, sharing countries with Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, Jews. And it's like, you look at what happens in Europe when Muslims arrive, they might not be chopping people's heads off, but they bring Sharia law with them. They use the Arabic script. They do the call to prayer. And when they get power, they're going to use that power. You're going to get a very different flavor of Muslim heritage or culture when they're in the majority versus when they're in the minority. And I feel like there's something true about that here as well. That's why we need kind of like an explicit Christian identification. We need to identify the West with Christendom. We need to identify America with Christendom. And we need to identify our government with Christendom because that's where all these things come from. All the way that things are, all our priors come from Christendom. And so I think that, you know, I'm not saying I want to hurt Jewish people. That's the biggest misconception. And you're spot on. You know, to the extent that Hitler wanted to annihilate the Jews, that is completely contrary to all of Christianity, because all of Christianity prophesizes they will be there at the end and they will convert and they were a witness to Christ also. So that's just not in the lexicon of like Aquinas and Augustine. They said we must protect them, actually.
Nick getting interviewed by the actor who played Jack Sparrow. Crazy world. I know. Is that not insane?
But they also can't have power.
Johnny Depp
they also
having
can't
Nick
have power
on?
over Christian society. And that's kind of the nuance.
Wow.
So, and that's a difficult thing for people to accept.
I've got a few things here, mate. One is with regard to the kind of, one might say, depending on one's particular purview, the cliche stereotype, archetype, truth.
Nick sweeping for Jews again. Yeah, you hear that?
Coming together could be, of course, understood because of until, you know, the late 40s or whether they didn't have a homeland. And I know there are other peoples without homelands as well, but I suppose also there is the sort of other events of the mid 20th century, notably the Holocaust. And, you know, I know the kind of arguments exist around that, but there certainly was persecution and annihilation. So, like, both of those cultural and social and geopolitical
as we would 100% agree,
for me, would justify, in fact, what you've described as a sort of a religious and ethnic alliances between Jewish people outside of Israel. Then also, I thought that all three of those faiths come from the same region by definition. Christianity also comes from the Middle East. So the assumption that Christianity ought be the founding ideology, or at least inform, if you're into secularism, I'm not sure that I am anymore.
Why
anyway.
should we not worship
certainly not just one division. I really believe in decentralization.
Good
That's
question,
the idea.
good
For me,
question.
is the message: decentralize. Stop this.
Get Nick off the chimney. He can't stop sweeping. This dude fucked Katy Perry. Now he's hanging out with us. Isn't that crazy? Johnny Depp fucked Katy Perry, and now he's interviewing Nick Fuentes.
Cacophony of endless violence
Got
and
off the
senseless
Black
argument.
Pearl.
We can't contain it. But my point is that all of these faiths have emerged from that environment.
point
so
is,
the presumed supremacy of Christianity is the doctrine that informs, even though I think it's kind of pagan now, American culture, isn't it? It's sort of pagan, British culture, sort of pagan, hedonic, atheistic, disgusting. And I agree with you that it is a religious order that we're discussing now. But the Christianity that the West has inherited, ludicrous though it might seem to say, is not the Christianity of our Lord, but the Christianity, is it, of the imperialist Rome, and however it bolted Christ's message onto its necessary imperial requirements. I felt that pretty viscerally, I must say, when in Rome. And by the way, I'm super fascinated by Catholicism, and I pray the rosary, and I love saints and stuff. So I'm not like, and I also believe it is his body and blood. Like, so I mean, I don't know, I'm pretty adjacent. So my feeling is, though, that I felt like when I was near the Vatican and I looked at them sort of free paintings by Caravaggio of St. Matthew, the one where he's getting the message, one where he's writing the gospel, and one where he's being flayed alive. And it just came to me, like, look at the Vatican, look at that power, look at that wealth. If they were as serious about it as he was, the Vatican would be truly almost militarized. I don't mean necessarily violent, but, you know, we're in a war. We're in a war. So why are we like complacently Christian? Like, and I'm not accusing you of that. You don't seem like a complacent person. Oh, actually, you seem supercharged with the Lord alone knows what, Nick. I'm still trying to work it all out. But like, so my point is, among my points are, don't we attribute many of the critiques that you've offered to Judaism, in particular, say, the sort of cadre, inverted commas, of Jews that are in positions of influence and power in America, to social and geopolitical conditions rather than some sort of weird esoteric component? And if you're right that it is, and when we're talking about Christianity and the establishment of the West, we're talking about something that was pre-imperialized by Rome. And if you're right, and I think I agree with you, and I don't know enough to argue with you, that we are living in a religious order now, don't we have to bring to the forefront both Augustine and Aquinas' decree of love towards, like,
wrap it up.
At the forefront when we're dealing with Israel, Judaism, and Islam, actually, like, you know, and if so, what could we be, is there something we could be doing differently? Not that all of us have to be the bloody same and be doing the same role. You got a different job, I got a different job, you know, whatever.
This isn't free content. This isn't fun to watch.
No, I absolutely agree with that.
How do you agree with that? How do you even remember what he said?
I absolutely agree that love has to be at the center, because I think that is what differentiates our religion from the others, is the radical and unconditional love of Jesus Christ. I mean, I think that when you look at the modern Middle East, that's actually what's missing. Is I don't think the Israelis unconditionally love the Palestinians. I don't think the various Muslim factions unconditionally love the Jews or the Christians, for that matter.
They seem like they do.
And I would say that the Christians in the West, I think you're right, America and Europe are paganized, and even many of the Christian sects are paganized too. Do they radically and unconditionally love either? So I think you're right. That does need to be at the center, because that is, on some level, when we talk about, like, let's say, liberalism or even progressivism, a lot of people say that these modern left-wing strains of ideology, and by liberalism, I mean like Enlightenment liberalism as well as leftism, people say they're a bastardization or an offshoot of Christianity. And I think the things that are good about those things absolutely are, because it is love for the poor, the weak, the vulnerable. Someone like a Greta Thunberg, I disagree with her about probably 80% of things, but why is she going to Gaza? Because her heart bleeds for the Palestinians. And that is Christ's heart, maybe without the truth of Christ or the justice of Christ or something like that. And so the things that differentiate
he's blowing Russell
Western
Brand's
Europe,
mind right now. Okay, I take it back. This is entertaining because he's like literally blowing his mind. Dude, look at his face as Nick is talking right now. Watch this.
That is Christ's heart, maybe without the truth of Christ or the justice of Christ
he
or
is
something
loving
like
this.
that. And so the things that differentiate Western Europe, liberal, pagan, progressive Western Europe from Israel is that there still is the faint echo of Christ's beating heart in Western Europe there too, right? And so maybe that's the fusion. Maybe that's where we bring together.
Dude, hippies loving Nick is so funny. Like, hippies hearing Nick's message and being like, gosh.
The right and the left, that's the thing that we have in common, is that we share that kind of same, even if it's cultural expression, still, it's an expression of something religious and something deeper. So I agree, but I think that Rome and Judea, that's the story from the beginning. Rome and Israel, that's Jacob and Esau. That's the partnership. It was Rome and Israel that killed Christ. It's Rome and Israel until the end. And so I think now we do need to bring back Rome a little bit and strengthen.
What? Did he just fucking groan?
Jacob and Esau, that's the partnership. It was Rome and Israel that killed Christ. It's Rome and Israel until the end. And so I think now we do need to bring back Rome a little bit and strengthen it.
What was that noise?
That's good stuff, man. I was really touched actually by what you said about Greta Thunberg, because I feel like I saw the
True though.
The shadow, or maybe the light is better, of the, because she's like a window, huh? That's how I've heard it described, of the Holy Mother. I'm not saying that, but it also brought me to the heart of my own faith.
I'm not saying that in any kind of weird way. I just mean archetypically.
In so much as when it's best, it's because I'm not there. As he says in Galatians, when it's best, it's because I'm not there. It's because I've died unto myself on the cross, and it's he that is reborn in me. And of course, that idea was trying to instantiate in Marcus Aurelius's, you should have no more connection to yourself.
I don't think what he just said is offensive. I don't even think most Catholics would find that offensive, but it is funny because that's just like, if you didn't know that he's just like a total hippie, you would think that was like bait at like Tradcasts to freak out or something. To get like that.
And some person long dead, or Buddhism's put down the corpse. And I love what you said, that this radical love of Christ is precisely what the Middle East is calling for. And I am interested even in what you say about Jacob, Esau, Rome, and Judea. I'm really interested in trying to understand that a little more. We've done quite a lot there, didn't we? We've done 86 minutes.
Okay, we're wrapping it up.
Yeah. Well, you want to touch more on that, or?
Yeah, I do a bit if you want to carry on talking. I suppose what I was thinking there, Nick, is like that you and I are not actually in theoretical positions. When you said that, you know, it's not hypothetical, because you are Nick Fuentes, scourge of many, a demon. I read a thing the other day by
I
still read. I must have subscriptions on like to Substack newsletters from a different incarnation. So I read sort of like the kind of leftist intelligentsia that I kind of would still like to, in some ways, advocate for, in the sort of way that you did for Greta Thunberg there, who I also really admire, and I see the saintliness in her, although I also see the thing that's quite annoying, which is the, how dare you? It's that bit, isn't it? It's that bit that she should work on.
Yeah, true though.
Like, anyway, like, he says, like, one of these, like, super left guys that, like...
Actually, that's like Chud Boomer bait, because, like boomers fucking... hate Greta Thunberg. You know what I mean? Like, people who literally cannot think deeply, like past very partisan politics, or like couldn't imagine someone else just having like a different position. It's like from a good place. Hate her so much. So saying stuff like that is just actual like grade A boomer bait. Like, they fucking hate Greta Thunberg. Even though it is totally true. It's like, in the same way that they're, you know, like a lot of liberals are just fucking idiots. But they really are coming from a place of just caring, and they are just like ignorant or naive or, you know, whatever. That is real. Like that, their heart is yearning to do right, obviously, like, and it's clear, and that is true. Like, Greta Thunberg is getting on a boat that the Israelis are like threatening to fucking blow up in the middle of the ocean.
He's a sort of a Terrence McKenna ayahuasca type person.
Boomers would skin Greta. Boomers would. Boomers fucking hate her.
But still beatnicked up to the Kerouacs on like the left of the left. Like, man, he was like in some sort of email he wrote about like Charlie Kirk, he talked about you a lot. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm interviewing Nick Fuentes in a couple of days. This will be pretty cool. And what I feel like is, do you feel that perhaps with... This is, in a sense, the sort of bullshit that I used to get when I was famous in normal world. Like,
I didn't know what he was saying. I thought he meant Greta Thunberg was a window genuinely. I think what he was saying is that Greta Thunberg, he was saying archetypically, you can see the love of, I mean, he was saying like, Mother Mary, like, he was saying the Virgin Mary, kind of, but I think what Russell Brand means is more archetypically. Like he is speaking in like a Jungian archetypical sense. So he's just saying like a divine feminine archetype of compassion, even though it is naive, even though it is like being taken advantage of. You can see there's love, that there is like love and a selflessness in it that exists. That's what he was saying, but he is like just so ADHD that he couldn't even finish the point he was making.
Don't you think that you should be a role model in the way that we'd like you to be a role model? And that's bullshit. And I loved like how when Tupac went, a role is something you play, a model something you make. This all bullshit. Fuck off. I don't trust you or your values. But as Christians, if he tells us love, 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 and we are interested in truth, and we're not just doing this for views, me getting pulled further and further one way because of what does well.
Thinks typology is Jungian. No, typology and Myers-Briggs stuff is just garbage and retarded, and that's gay. But archetypes and the goddess archetype have nothing to do with that. That's just like stolen by Myers-Briggs. That's retarded.
Before I was demonetized, what does well on Rumble now that I'm on it? What things seem to get clicks on the various places I have to inhabit? You know, like I'm finding it hard now because like the Christ in me is growing. I feel him more, the monologue collapsing yet increasing into dialogue. Like, so I feel like if I'm like talking about China and Putin, I'm like, I don't know what China's gonna do. Like, I don't know. That's what I feel. So like I keep returning to this kind of resolute love, and I don't want it to be phony, I don't want it to be boring, I don't want it to be phatic. So I don't think that you would do any of those three things. So I wonder
what's the numerology for divine feminine? 11 or 2. Everything is symbols. Everything is. It's just true. Like that is what that is. I mean, in some sense, the Myers-Briggs stuff is kind of like real because it's just, you know, applying a different lens onto archetypes, obviously. It's just like commoditized into a stupid like business sense thing. But yeah, archetypically, the anima, your divine feminine, the divine feminine archetype is 2, is the second. You have the masculine, Aries, the sun, 1, Adam, the beginning, creation, God the Father. 2, you have expansion, the divine feminine, the moon, etc. 3, you have creation. You have like the child, the earth, generative. And 2 is 11. You know, it's like the same thing.
I had some mad flash there, like we should go to Israel. We should go to Israel. We should go to the West Bank and we should talk about Christ. We should like be Christian there and loving and non-judgmental. And like, what would people do? When I was talking to Tommy Robinson the other day on this, you know, like he goes, like I went to Israel and I was there with my mate Dean, and I was like, and it's so British where he's saying, we went, there's a bit that goes, you know, you can't go down here. And it was like, where it's like, I feel like you're going into some sort of Muslim ghetto or something. He goes, come on, let's go. We're not meant to go, Tommy. You're the leader of the EDL. And I'm like, yeah, we're going. I thought, like, that's what I like about Tommy Robinson. Like, what you like about Greta Thunberg is that, you know, her heart bleeds. Like, that's so beautiful. What I like about Tommy Robinson is like, this guy is serious about the British working class. What I like about Nick Fuentes is this guy is clever and he's communicating across these things, and you're catching a lot of balls and throwing, you're juggling well.
Right, he lost us.
Like, but like, I don't all of us, if we're all saying we're Christian, have to succumb to him, bow down, every knee shall bow. Every tongue shall proclaim. Isn't from the highest mountain, even as the prophetic stuff in the first books. What do you think? Do you think we need to change?
You probably don't have a premium subscription to his channel, Kickflip. You only watch 20 minutes of it.
Do you think we are called to, you know, like, wow, you know, looking at that, remember when I went down that list, it's like, I think you've had, I don't know, because I don't know about all your arguments, but like Candace Owens and like, you know, there's in it like that we should be looking for ideological unity and acknowledgement that there's a requirement that politically, which politics is just the management of resources, that politically there needs to be some sort of manifestation of how the technology is plainly influencing the areas where it's regulated or is regulated
20 minutes ago.
To advance the true monotheistic deity that's in charge, which I still think of as Satan. And, you know, that's a hard thing for us to wrap up. But I know there was a lot in that, but you get the idea.
No, yeah. It's something that I struggle with because it's sort of like the ideal versus the real in some sense. I think this is a tension that exists in all people, which is, you know, you feel like when you we all have to like live our lives. We know what that means in practice. We have jobs, we have families, you got drama, and you have politics, and you know, and you have problems in the world. I mean, you have firefighters and cops and jail wardens because we still live in the world. At the same time, we have this higher aspiration. We have an aspiration for unity, a deeper unity, and something
20 minutes
universal.
Ago, and it's 2 hours long.
And so the way that I've always resolved it for myself is, you know, my vocation is I'm a political activist or a political advocate, because we still do live in a political order where it requires political solutions and analysis and so on. I just try to live my faith and be as open and expressive about it as possible, and just make that part of what I do in the same way that a doctor would, and the same way that someone with another vocation would do the same thing. You know, you try to live it as best as you can. And maybe the reason I wouldn't go all the way is because I don't consider myself a saint-like person. I'm a very imperfect person. And I also don't even consider theology to be my aptitude or my intuition. I mean, politics is really, for me, what I'm good at. You know, the Russia-China stuff, the international relations, that's my passion. It's what I love talking about. But I just try to lay it on there, or, you know, lay it all out there when I bring that to the table as well, that I'm a Catholic with a vocation, so to speak. That's kind of how I resolve it.
Thank you. On that basis, then, do you feel that, like the beautiful and pivotal scene in the movie Network, where eventually the idealistic newscaster is confronted by the representative of the conglomeration that ultimately owns the network? And
okay, 12 more minutes.
Do you understand what you're dealing with? Do you understand the amount of power? If American power is compromised, do you see what's ready to go? So if that is your area of interest and expertise,
bring it on.
Do you feel that ultimately that the argument we're engaged in really is not one of domestic America first, but let America do whatever America's got to do? Because if America is unstable, it looks like economic and even military alliances might be achieved between China and Russia and the highly populous and industrious countries like India and Brazil. And if that does happen, we're in some serious trouble.
Dude, speeding it up makes this even harder.
Can you give me a version of your analysis of that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is true that these other civilizations, China, Russia, there is a spiritual dimension to that too, you know, because if America, and when we talk about America first, America,
we've
let's
been
put
streaming
it in
it the entire
context.
stream, JT.
America is the inheritor to Rome. America is the seat of Western power, European power, Christian power. There's no country more powerful than America. We're the most powerful Christian, you know, Rome or Western civilization descended country. And what we're talking about in 2025, this multipolarity, this is something brand new. Western Europe has had primacy for at least 500 years, maybe more. And before that, there wasn't a ton of interaction with the rest of the world and the West. China was out there. India was out there. It was really Christians and Muslims that were fighting. And so this is really a new chapter where we're coming into a confrontation with the whole rest of the world. And the primacy of Christianity and Christian Europe and the West is now passing Europe and its colonies, its countries like America or the others. And so fighting for the survival of America, in a sense, it's fighting for the whole of all of it. It's fighting for the inheritance of all of it. Let's say, for example, a domestic issue like America, immigration. If immigration fundamentally changes America, America ceases to be a Christian country, ceases to be European Christian. And what do you have going on in Europe? The United Kingdom, France, Germany, these countries don't have militaries. They'll be dominated by China. They'll be dominated by other forces. Maybe some kind of supranational entity like a World Economic Forum, the UN, something like that. So I really do believe that these challenges are united. America has supremacy now, will be a great power for the foreseeable future. Fighting to define what America is for the sake of, who we used to be or Christianity, I think that is like, I identify that struggle with the struggle of Christianity in terms of its political expression. So that's how I would contextualize it.
I agree to a point, except, of course, that there is such a tense interface between spiritual and cultural forces, and nation is a drop in the bucket. Nation is a drop in the bucket. Like the real interface is between him, and this is where we become relevant as individuals, whether we have influence in large audiences or not. Is that the prima materia of our consciousness is the only thing that we can ultimately yield to him. And I agree with you that we should do whatever it is we do in Christ. And that what you do is political punditry. Except I suppose that there is such
this is giving me a headache,
Nick, to what you do, and because you're continually
hurting my head. This is making me want to die. Oh my gosh!
I would say, if I was, God, I hate giving uninvited critiques. Organs.
Certainly, I had issues with him. That's why
we're gonna watch
he got
the
taken
last
out.
3 minutes.
And so I think that
okay, wait, Charlie. Let's hear the Charlie Kirk
to the world. And I feel like
here we go. Last 3 minutes.
Here we go. In the world, but not of the world. So much of what I do and the feedback that I get is from people that say, I got into your show because of right-wing politics, but you put me on to the Catholic Church, or you put me on to Christianity. And not everybody that watches my show converts to Catholicism in particular, but they start to think of these things in a deeper way. And I think that ultimately is the mission. To the extent that I eulogize Charlie Kirk, I just told really had issues with him for many years. But the one thing that I did respect ultimately is that he is a martyr. He was killed by a leftist because he opposed transgenderism. It was a leftist with a trans boyfriend who killed him for his advocacy of the truth on a matter of morals and faith, because he was taking that message to the young where they were on the campuses, on social media for that matter. And, so however sincere you think it was, or disagreements, certainly I had issues with him. That's why he got taken out. And so I think that, if there's anything real that could be taken, because to be honest with you, what I viewed as Charlie Kirk's work for 7 years was partisan hackery. That's how I saw it. I saw it as very polemical, very partisan, he's defending the Trump government, vote Republican. But seeing how people responded, they saw his faith. They looked past the polemical culture war stuff, and what they saw was his heart. What they saw was the matters of moral and faith that he talked about. And so, if there's anything maybe that we can learn, it's, what are people going to remember from you or from me? It's our testimony. It's our testimony of faith. And maybe, so the advice is taken. You say, well, unsolicited, I think you're out. I think everyone can take that to heart after this.
Praise Jesus. We can,
wow, and Nick doesn't even say it back. He doesn't even chant that back. Wow.
Thanks, Nick. That was real good. That alarm was this clock ran out of minutes. See, this guy
just tells it all.
It's like it ran out of minutes. So I thought, I need a man. That's pretty good. I really wanted to do a joke just then where it's like,
fake Catholic,
because we nearly did it. Like when you're like, he was killed by transgender, and I'm like,
yeah, this might be because Nick converted to Judaism after Charlie Kirk's assassination.
If Nick Fuentes don't think it's Israel, it ain't Israel.
Well, that's true.
We could use that. That's a slogan. You might be able to, that could be monetized.
Okay. Anyway, that was fun. Next. Very good. Moving on. What else we got? Now we got to like reorient ourselves. That was the entire stream so far. And that was like, I like Russell Brand, but man, that was like hard to fucking watch as content for like a stream. That was, because it's hard to even pay enough attention while streaming to like really follow what he's saying. I mean, even you guys just listening, hard to follow what he's saying.